Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm your host, Super Kami Guru Alucard, and we are back for another episode of I've watched almost every Humphrey Bogart movie. Today's episode, we will be counting down from 50 all the way to 41. And by then, we'll be at the halfway point. Of course, at the end of the episode, I will do a review of where the countdown has gone so far, all the way from 80 to where we get to today. So stay tuned for that. And if you've not seen any of the previous episodes, please check them out in case you are interested to know where exactly we've gone so far on this journey. Of course, I hope you will enjoy this episode. And the further we get down into the countdown, the better the movies get. So, this is definitely going to be a good one today because there really is some great movies and definitely some underrated ones. Some are earlier Bogarts for sure. Some are actually later, but this is where we start to get into the pretty good territory. Like we've gotten through most of the average to the good ones, and now we're in sort of the pretty good. After this, though, the halfway point, that's when it really starts to get into excellent territory. And then we'll say superb, incredible, and the best for last. So, starting off, we have another Western. This one was actually with James Cagney as the main star called The Oklahoma Kid. Now, I really liked Bogart's character in this one because he didn't have to put on an accent. He could just pretty much talk like he normally does, but he would play sort of a criminal bandito who was, you know, using his gang to manipulate this new settlement town in the area and basically manipulating them to get into gambling, alcohol distribution, women, all that kind of stuff. And Bogart was a real sly dog in this one. Now, he is a very diabolical villain because this was the era when they were typecasting him as villains. He was very good as a villain in this role. The one thing I definitely remember about this movie, I really was surprised because Bogart's not really known for westerns, but as a western, even Cagney, he was more of a gangster guy. Both of them were incredibly great in this movie. Like, definitely the best western for Bogart, and probably the best western for Cagney, to my knowledge. Although I've not seen every potential western he could have been in, but I know they were both very good together in this one. Now, Cagney sort of plays the anti-hero in this one, which is really good because he's on the run. He's a criminal. He steals money too, but he's kind of out for justice. He fights for a good cause. He's got more of a good sense of morals than Bogart's character does in this one. And his father is actually a high-ranking official that gets set up by Bogart and then hanged and killed. His brother, Cagney's brother, is the sheriff in this town who basically tries to stop Bogart, gets killed in the process. This leads to a big, huge saloon, bar room brawl between the two. They're throwing bottles, smashing chairs over each other's heads, shit like that. Really great fight scene. I loved it. It was such a great way to end the movie. And then the comic ending where he ends up marrying what was technically his brother's girl originally at the start of the movie, at the end for James Cagney, was a very funny, nice, romantic way to end the movie. And actually, the girl's father, I did notice he was the main monk or friar in Brother Orchard. So I thought that was kind of cool. Like I recognized him. It's cool how, as I've been watching those movies, all these movies, I've been like, oh, I recognize this guy from this movie. So you could see a lot of the minor actors really jumped around a lot, which was very cool to see, reoccurring faces. So yeah, that's number 50. At number 49, we have another movie that Bogart actually really didn't like making, The main reasons he didn't like making this was he kind of was often in competition with George Raft for playing the tough guy roles, so he really didn't care to share the screen with him too much. Um, and the fact that William Holden, who he would act in another movie later on, got higher billing above him. William Holden was also another, he would later become a more legendary actor in that era. So it was kind of a bit of a, it rubbed Bogart the wrong way with the casting choices and the billing. But overall, the movie is pretty good. I think he was tired of also playing the gangster character, whereas actually Bogart's character was a little more honorable and decent as a gangster in this movie, which I kind of like the shift in tone in his direction of character because it kind of symbolized where he was heading later on with his career path. Now, it is a good movie because basically George Raft gets out of jail. He tries to like turn his life around. Bogart goes back to the usual gangster rackets, but Raft is actually trying to go straight. He struggles to get jobs. He gets set up and framed for robbing a store. He gets acquitted and all that, but then his brother runs into a tough spot, almost gets in a fight. He needs like a spot to start a business to go straight because he lost his job. He wants to do things right so that he can marry his love. So George Raft returns to the criminal underworld, the rackets, helping out Bogie, robbing a bunch of jobs to get his necessary cut to help his brother start the mechanic's garage and, of course, marry his sweetheart. His brother looks up to him, thinks his brother's made it, claims that he's traveling all over the country selling tractors. His brother buys it until he gets in a spot where he has to help out his brother's friend, who he realizes later on is one of the gangsters. Because they're going to take him down, he has to basically turn things around, flip everything upside down. Bogart knows that they're going to double cross him. At first, he's kind of looking out for his own skin, but then he kind of realizes, like, you know what? They're going to try to kill me too because I know too much. I might as well help this guy out because at least this guy was always straight with me, even back in prison. And they both end up getting taken out, and the brother gets to live happily ever after. But in the end, he names his garage after him and his brother, which was a nice sort of, you know, tribute. So overall, Invisible Stripes, I think, is a pretty good movie. But at the same time, I could totally understand why Bogart really didn't care making this movie that much. Next, at 48, we have You Can't Get Away with Murder. Now, this features, I'm not sure if the other Dead End kids appear in this movie, but one of them is in this one. He is for sure. And the plot revolves around a brother who's like getting into crime. He's basically helping Bogart out to pull off like a few small jobs. They're about to go for a big one. The gun goes off, kills a guy. They basically make it look like it's the other guy who gets put on death row. The brother basically gets caught for the stick up with Bogart. They're facing lesser charges, but now the guy that the little kid hated originally because he was this guy who was seeing his sister and he kind of didn't like that she was spending all his time and focus and they wanted to move to Boston. So he really didn't like this guy, but he feels terrible guilt as he's rotting away in jail knowing that this guy's going to get the electric chair and it's his fault. So eventually the guilt starts to build and overcome him. And then knowing he's going to crack as they plan a prison break, Bogart basically tries to set the kid up to reveal that it's actually him. Unfortunately, he injures the kid, thinks he's dead, tries to say that it was him, in which case he ends up getting killed by the kid, who then admits it was him that took the gun from his brother's shelf or closet or something like that because he was a security guard and gave it to Bogart. So they end up clearing him. And it's a pretty good story. Actually, I really did like the kids struggle of this movie. Bogart sort of played the back role in this movie to the kid who's really acting like his ass off. He's putting on the performance of a lifetime as this guilt-stricken kid. The other supporting cast were very good. Bogart was good in this. I mean, him kind of being the higher up dog guiding this kid down the wrong road, he did a fantastic job at that. So, yeah, that's why You Can't Get Away with Murder falls in at 48. Next, we have The Great O'Malley. Now, this is another one with Pat O'Brien. Actually, probably my favorite of all the Pat O'Brien movies I saw with Bogart. He plays a very strict, uptight cop who's like ticketing people for like the most unnecessary things. He ends up ticketing Bogart, making him lose a job. He's forced to resort to robbing a place and sticking him up because he needs to feed his family, right? He ends up going to jail. And then Pat, because of all this, gets reassigned as a crossing guard police officer to help out the kids, which he really doesn't like. He feels it's beneath him. But then he starts to form a bond and an attachment with this little crippled girl who's lame, can't really walk too well. And oddly enough, that's Bogart's daughter. So, as time goes on, Patrick eventually, Pat O'Brien, the Great O'Malley's character, basically has the daughter fixed up with surgery, pays a doctor to do it. Don't say I did it, just do it as a good deed. He's getting groceries to help out the family. Obviously the wife is still very angry and dismayed by him because he's the reason that her husband went to jail. He comes back. He thinks because O'Malley says he wants to see him and talk to him, which he's learned to redeem himself. He wants to apologize and make things right. He's actually become a better person as a result of, the bond with the daughter. But of course, Bogart's shady. Everybody's telling him, "Oh, they're always going to be after you. The cops are always going to be trying to put you back." So he's paranoid. He thinks he's going to have to kill O'Malley to get away at this point. The gun goes off. O'Malley gets shot. But then, as O'Malley's in the hospital, they're about to send Bogart back, and he says, "No, he was giving me the gun because he didn't want to violate his parole. He had it in his house. He wasn't going to shoot me. The gun accidentally went off. It was my fault. So you can't do anything to him. Let him go." And that ends up saving him, really redeems himself. Obviously, the great O'Malley heals. He becomes a more honorable and respectable officer. And just overall, the great O'Malley I thought was a really nice change from gangster roles for Bogart. Like him playing the really caring, loving, hardworking father who just kind of got into a bind was a really nice change. And I think he did a fantastic job. So yeah, that's number 47. Number 46, King of the Underworld. Now, this is returning to the gangster roles, although I did thoroughly enjoy this gangster role for Bogart because he was kind of more sophisticated than normal. He wanted to have a book written about him. There was a writer he came across and was kind of holding him hostage to write this book. He was basically using this one doctor who got killed in a police raid to help him stitch up his guys if ever they got injured or got shot and stuff. And then basically the wife, who was also a doctor, ends up in the same kind of role. At one point, Bogart's about to kill them both. Now the book is pretty much written and he's about to do it, but because she's a doctor, she basically claims that they have an eye infection and they need to take these drops or it could lead to permanent eyesight. Now she knows that if they use a certain amount, it'll blur their vision for a good amount of time. So she tricks them to try and get away. Now Bogart, because they take out all Bogart's gang members because the police are closing in too from a tip of what's going down. Now Bogart, he's lost his sight and he's trying to hunt them down and he can't see. That is one of the most iconic moments of the movie, and that's really what made it because it was so intense. It was almost comical, but it was very well done, and I like that. So yeah, that's why King of the Underworld falls in at number 46. Number 45 is another movie he did with his good pal, Leslie Howard, and Joanne Blondell was in this one, and it was called Stand-In. It was a nice take on the controversial side of Hollywood, how they exploit their actors, how the businesses are cutting corners to make profit for themselves to go in their own pocket, how the people investing in them are affected. Really nice. Leslie Howard actually really was the star of this movie, and he was really funny. But at the same time, I like how serious Bogart took his role as the director, trying to make less than good, very average people into big stars, and he was very effective at it. Now, the way he has to fight to save his studio at the end, Leslie Howard helping him out and everything, was absolutely fantastic. Of course, this is more of a Leslie Howard movie overall, but Bogart as a supporting role, you could tell they were good friends, they got along, and it becomes very apparent with their chemistry on screen in this movie. And just overall, it is a really good movie. And plus, this is one of the last movies Leslie Howard would make before he died. So it's nice to see that, towards his era of acting in Hollywood before he went to Britain and then got shot down in a plane because they thought his manager was Winston Churchill during World War II, he still made some really good pictures near the end in his time in Hollywood. So yeah, 45. Kid Galahad. Now, this is a boxing movie, and it's really good because, I mean, you have a great all-star cast. Returning from The Return of Dr. X and Men Are Such Fools, we have Wayne Morris as Kid Galahad. Betty Davis is in this. She's fantastic. And of course, the man, Edward G. Robinson, just owns the show. But then Bogart as the gangster who's like sort of competing fighter wise with Edward G. Robinson, like they're both managers and they both have fighters that want to compete. They have sort of beef with each other. Their fighters have beef. So it's overall a really good story. And then the way Kid Galahad gets set up because Edward G. Robinson's pissed that Kid Galahad was seeing his sister and that his girl was gonna leave him for Edward G for Kid Galahad too at one point. So he sets this guy in to get dummied in the ring. But then he starts to feel bad. He redeems himself, teaches him the proper strategy to win against Bogart's fighter, and he does. Of course, Bogart being pissed and being a sore loser as a real gangster vows revenge. He goes in there and he's about to take out Kid Galahad when Edward G. Robinson redeems himself one more final time and jumps in front of the bullet and gets taken out instead. And he basically dies, revealing that he did love Betty Davis's character, that he was sorry for mistreating her, and she kind of returns the same gesture as he fades out. But overall, great movie. I really liked Kid Galahad. So, yeah, 44 for sure. Number 43, It All Came True. Now, I always talk about how they just handed Bogart the gangster roles one after the other, one after the other. This is another example, though, of where he plays a gangster, but he actually has some redeeming, likable qualities to him. For example, he's basically on the run. He's helping out this piano player. His mother and that they're basically running a lodge for older and disabled people. Basically, Bogart needs a place to hide out to rest while he recovers. Uh, the piano player's old love interest comes in. Of course, Bogart wants her for himself, so he's gonna try and take her from the piano player. This leads into a conflict where he's basically gonna lead the piano player to go for the rap originally, but then he forms a bond with the mother, the people, the house. He's basically turned the boarding house into its own new crazy nightclub. And he basically surrenders himself so that the piano player and the woman he had a crush on could basically live happily ever after. Now, another cool note before we move on to the next one, I felt was worth mentioning. Zazu Pitts, who was the silent film star that was also in Bad Sister, plays a very good role as sort of hysterical tenant who discovers that Bogart's character is the criminal at first, and then ends up going to the police station, going all crazy and stuff. That was an absolutely fantastic role for her. So Just worth mentioning. And that's why, yeah, it all came true. It's overall a really nice, well done story, and a nice change for Bogart being a cutthroat bad guy and actually having good redeemable characteristics in this film. So, yeah, it all came true. 43. Next, we have Battle Circus. Battle Circus is a later movie of Bogart's. This is actually after he had gotten into the peak of his career. He was in the prime. It was in the last decade of his career. It's almost a MASH style movie. Like, you know, the show MASH with Radar, Hawkeye, all that. It's kind of like that sort of setting, set in the Korean War. Really nice, beautiful story. Bogart plays a surgeon. At one point, he cracks under the pressure trying to get the woman he likes, who's a nurse, to notice him. Gets drunk off scotch, has a hilarious scene with that, gets scolded. But as far as being a surgeon, he's the best one on the battlefield. And it really is a battle circus because they're constantly traveling around to different camps to help out different soldiers. And eventually, their camp is about to get invaded by the enemy, so they have to leave. And the road gets blocked off. It becomes a very dangerous, hard, difficult, and treacherous journey to get to safety. Luckily, the nurse was able to go ahead. Bogart's got to take the others behind in trucks. So the whole time she's worrying, will she ever see him again? She realizes that she does love him and feels the same way that he felt for her, and just sort of prays that she'll get to see him again. And in the end, they're finally reunited in what would be the closest to a happily ever after you could get in a war movie. But overall, for a later movie and a war movie, this was a really good one of Bogart's. I definitely think it's a really underrated gem. If Bogart fans haven't seen that one, I definitely think it's worth checking out. So, for our final movie of today, we have the amazing Dr. Clitterhouse. And for the last one to talk about today, I'm glad we get to talk about this one because oh my god, this movie is another one Bogart really didn't like doing cuz once again, they made him a gangster. And he was really getting tired of just gangster role after gangster role. But this movie is phenomenal. And why I say it's so good is, I mean, Edward G. Robinson is really the star of this movie. And Edward G. Robinson puts on one of the best performances I've ever seen in any movie he's done course, with Bogart, there's only a couple movies I'd say his performance tops, but he plays a doctor who kind of goes a little nutty and decides he's going to infiltrate the criminal underworld to study the effects medically that it has on criminals. He's checking their blood, their DNA, examining their pupils, all these things, their blood pressure, and he's making notes to write a book on what it's like to be a criminal. Now, he actually gets really deep. He also strategically helps Bogart, the gang, and this woman who falls in love with him, plan all these jobs to infiltrate. The woman is played by Claire Trevor, by the way, to infiltrate the circle, get him to pull him off. Bogart really starts to dislike this guy, and at first he's going to lock Edward G. Robinson's character in a freezer to kill him. But one of the guys who lagged behind ends up using a blowtorch to cut through the lock, get him out, and they kind of joke about how he actually saved him by slowing the oxygen pressure down by locking him in a freezer and how it was not a very effective way to kill him. Now, after this, Bogart gets really suspicious, starts to figure out that, oh, the professor, as they call him, is actually a doctor, and he's probably going to rat them all out sooner or later. So he basically plans to blackmail him, force him to keep working for him. He's going to be the boss, call the shots from now on, gets greedy, tries to abuse his power. And that's when Edward G. Robinson basically decides, okay, there is one activity in the criminal underworld I have not studied the effects of yet, and that is murder itself. So, him and Claire Trevor basically poison Bogart's character, who goes through the effects of being drugged, being all dizzy before he dies. It's a very trippy and funny scene, but very dark, entertaining. I love that part of the movie. That was Bogart's standout moment in the movie was when he gets drugged and he's about to die and everything. Like it was really Bogart at his best in that movie for that part. Now, they eventually do find evidence to lead them to the good doctor. Now, before they're about to arrest him, the doctor is talking to a judge who is an old friend, basically gives him a hypothetical scenario about everything he did, writing the book. The judge says, "Oh, well, you could just plead insanity. A person could just plead insanity. If he's crazy enough to do all this to write a book, anybody would believe that this man is insane. So just tell him to do that. And by the way, do I know this guy?" And as the cops are coming in, "Yes, you do. It's me." So they send Edward G. Robinson's character on trial, and it seems like they're really arguing a case that this man must have been sane because he really believes that the book could be published as being true still. But eventually the jury kind of agrees, no, for him to even come up with this insane idea to do crimes, kill people, and rob places just to write a book, this guy is definitely crazy and insane. So Edward G. Robinson's character gets off, and of course, the woman that he saved her life, who was sort of the main dame running the show during the gang operations, is more than happy to see him get away as well. So, yeah, The Amazing Dr. Clitterhouse. Very good movie. I can understand why Bogart was tired of the gangster roles, but he was very good in it. Edward G. Robinson was a boss in it. Claire Trevor was good. It was just overall a really good movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. In fact, watching, I was like, this movie's crazy, yo. Like, Edward G. is this doctor doing all this crazy shit just to write a book was the most entertaining shit I saw like in a long time. Like that was a very memorable movie for me for that reason. So that concludes our countdown with The Amazing Dr. Clitterhouse at 41. Now we will do a quick recap of the list so far for anybody new tuning in. And of course, next episode tomorrow, we will go in to 40 to 31. So stay tuned and check out tomorrow's episode for that. But so far in the countdown, we have made it to 41. And we started at the TV version of the staged play adaptation of The Petrified Forest, You Murderer, a Tales from the Crypt episode which featured archived footage of Bogart, The Love Lottery, an uncredited cameo, Two Guys from Milwaukee, which is him and Lauren Bacall cameo uncredited. Sorry, you know what? Let me just redo it. That way I can state the numbers. Okay. 80, the Petrified Forest live stage play adaptation. 79, You Murderer You, Tales from the Crypt episode archive footage. 78, The Love Lottery with the uncredited cameo. 77, Two Guys from Milwaukee, him and Lauren Bacall have uncredited cameos. 76, Women of All Nations, where his scenes were all deleted from the final cut, therefore he does not appear in the completed film. 75, Body and Soul, which nobody seems to have a downloadable copy of, and there's no DVD that I know of. So I have not seen it. I don't know if anybody who has seen it. If anybody has a way to see it, please let me know. A Devil with Women at 74, same as above, although I have heard stories on the internet that there is old film reels of this preserved in a museum somewhere, not sure exactly where. But like I say, would eventually love to watch it one day, being a diehard Bogart fan. Always Together at 73, he plays a small cameo of a father crying in a window on a television, I believe. I have not seen it yet. There is a DVD available. I plan to get it in the future, but as of yet, still haven't seen it. For the ones I have seen, starting at 72, we have Midnight, also known as Call It Murder when it was changed to that, as a result of Bogart becoming a big star with its re release. A Holy Terror, one of his first movies at 71. Swing Your Lady at 70. The Return of Dr. X, 60 at 69. 68, Love Affair. 67, Men Are Such Fools. 66, Thank Your Lucky Stars. 65, Bad Sister. 64, Two Against the World. 63, Up the River. 62, Big City Blues. 61, 3 on a match. 60, Virginia City. 59, Isle of Fury. 58, Racket Busters. 57, Crime School. 56, Action in the North Atlantic. 55, China Clipper. 54, San Quentin. 53, Across the Pacific. 52, Dead End. 51, Brother Orchard. 50, The Oklahoma Kid. 49, Invisible Stripes. 49, Invisible Stripes. 48, You Can't Get Away with Murder. 47, The Great O'Malley. 46, King of the Underworld. 45, Stand-In. 44, Kid Galahad. 43, It All Came True. 42, Battle Circus. 41, The Amazing Dr. Clitterhouse. And that's all for today, but like I say, stay tuned to tomorrow's episode where we will count down from 40 all the way to 31. And because we're now getting into the halfway point, everything from here on is really getting into excellent territory. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you will come by tomorrow and check out the next episode of our wonderful series. Till then, I'm your host, Super Kami Guru Alucard, Oyasumi Nasai, Matane, and here's looking at you, kid. Peace out.